Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I strive to bring you guys some of the most amazing people in Sacramento. And tonight is no different. Tonight, actually, I get the chance to interview someone who is truly giving back to the community. And what I mean by that is I have a woman who has made it her life's mission to help those who need it. I have Miss Nicole Clavo Barkley in the building tonight. She actually is the manager of the Office of Violent Prevention, and she's gonna sit with us and talk to us about a little bit of work that she does. But before I sit with her, I wanna show you just a clip of some of the stuff that you're gonna hear tonight.
Always Nicole Clavo, Office of Violence Prevention. I was JJ's mom. I was Jalon Jamal Clavo, AKA JJ. I was his mom. And that was the most important role of my life. That was what I was living for. And on that day, almost 9 years ago in 14 days, I experienced the worst tragedy of my life. And that was losing my son to senseless gun violence.
Before we get into Dr. Clavo's story, we're gonna take a quick break and then we'll be right back with the interview. Don't go anywhere, you don't wanna miss it.
Everyday amazing with Sky Alton.
I'm E.L. Lucas, the creator of the app Dance It. Be sure to check out my episode on Everyday Amazing with Sky Alton.
O-M-G, G, 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 O-M-G, O-M-G.
Welcome to the show. As always, I bring you guys amazing guests, and tonight is no different. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Nicole Clavo Barkley. Good evening, good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with me. So right off the bat, I kind of want to get into your story. So tell me a little bit about your work that you do for the community, your organization.
So Healing 5 Foundation, number 5 was is like a family crest number. It represented my son, Jalon Jamal, that we affectionately call JJ. He was the 5th grandchild. He wore the number 5 for his football number. His birthday was 5/27. His sister's birthday is 5/5. Wow. I'm July the 15th. And so the number 5, my husband's April 5th. So the number 5 really, runs in the family. So my son was tragically murdered in Del Paso Heights on November 13th, 2015. And after the heart-pouring support, we got support nationally, we got support statewide, city, county, you name it, we had support pouring in. Money coming in cards, high schools sending in money, people just walking up and handing me money. Well, financially, I didn't need the money. And so with that money, my daughter and I decided that we needed to be able to give back. So we created the Healing 5 Foundation. So we are co-founders of that foundation. And through that, we started working with families who had gone through similar tragedies that did not receive the support, and those who would come in the future that needed that support.
So the first question I have many questions, but something you just said right there about you found that other families did not have the support that you got. Can you speak to maybe a little bit of why or how, what determines whether a story makes the news or compared to other stories, because I feel especially in the day and age of social media and everything like that, we have a lot more access to what's going on, right? But there's still so many stories and tragedies that we don't even hear about. And I just want to kind of maybe you can speak to it more of because you work in that field of how what determines what makes the news with some of these stories and what doesn't.
There's a few things. The first one is, unfortunately, in our communities and in our inner city communities where our Black and brown youth live, it is deemed the norm, right? It's deemed the norm that they're gunned down and that they're killing each other, and like it's expected from communities outside of those. I live in one of those communities outside of those communities in which I just spoke of. And so when they look at me having an education, having a home, having a good job, they automatically, it's not supposed to happen to you. You know, it's not supposed to happen to you.
Right.
It's okay if it happened to them, but it's not supposed to happen to you. It's expected if it happened in CV Circle, Oak Park, Del Paso Heights, Strawberry Manors, Meadowview. It's expected if it happened to the youth in those communities, but not the youth that live in Elk Grove or Roseville or in those areas, right? Those surrounding Sacramento, Placer County areas. It's abnormal. So that's the biggest issue. And I ran into that issue with a reporter who showed up at my house less than 24 hours after my son.
Wow.
And he said something similar to me as if it's different. And I threw him out of my house after telling him, we mourn the same.
Yeah.
Our children bleed the same. You don't get to come in my house and tell me or try to differentiate between me as a mom and someone else across town as a mom. It's not fair. No child should die and no parent should bury their child.
Absolutely. You know, what you said right there, I don't have kids, so I can't relate in the exact same way, but it's almost like I went to Sac State, I graduated, and it's almost like when someone tells me I'm an outlier, you know, because I went to school and, you know, have a degree, and so when I'm doing something positive, they're like, well, you know, you're different. And, you know, I used to say, well, I don't think I'm different. I just think if people have the opportunity to do something good and you give them an opportunity, they would do it. And so I do recognize that, you know, my story is a little different. I had a little bit more opportunities than some of the other people, but that doesn't make me, you know, I'm not an outlier. It's just a matter of like, I'm just a little bit more fortunate than some other people, right?
Right.
And so like when you said that, it just kind of reminded me of all the times I've been in a, you know, in a corporate office or even when I was in school, right? I've had teachers kind of say like, oh, you know, like you're different, almost like, you know, you're one of the good ones. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
What
like,
does that mean? What does that mean?
What's the bad one, you know?
Right.
And so, okay, with that said, you know, the work that you do is to help bring light to those communities and to those families and to those mothers who, you know, their story would not have made the news. And like, how do you, just walk me through, like, how do you go about that? What's the process of something like that?
Well, through my own experience, I realized that we must be the ones to first tell the story, right? We have to speak life into the narrative and can't let someone from the outside tell the narrative of who our child or loved one, you know, was, right? So initially, I wasn't going to speak to the media, and as the press was, as the reporter was walking down my sidewalk, I opened the door back, and it's not the same reporter, but a different one. And I was like, no, come in. Because in that moment, I knew that I had to be the one to tell the story. So one of the things from that experience, I was one of the first moms to be as vocal in Sacramento, you know, to kind of command the press, have positive media throughout the years, and be able to get them to come out. So I started hosting breakfasts. Channel 10 came to my house on a few occasions where I brought mothers, fathers, siblings in, and I hosted breakfasts for them, and we sat around. I brought Karika Bailey in, who's a friend of mine, and you know, he performed a song and sat with them, and him having his own experience and losing his brother being murdered in the South area. And so we just loved on those moms. We had one who had just like less than 24 hours had lost her son.
Wow.
And And we just allowed them to be able to speak their piece, be heard, listen intentionally, because they hadn't had that opportunity. Because again, it wasn't Friday Night Lights that their son had been murdered like mine. They weren't me who got all that attention. And so now it's time for me to bring the attention to them and make their stories heard, make them be seen, make their child's name not be in vain, but for them to put purpose behind their pain. And so I just continued. So then I added the DA's office to the luncheons, and then I added the detectives to the luncheons to really give them an opportunity to ask detectives questions. Also, not only that, but to let the detectives see them in a human way. Because a lot of times, the first time the detectives contact us, some of us are not going to use our ABC vocabulary.
Right.
You know, we're going to use our colorful one,
Because
right?
it's still morning,
We're
right?
still mourning. It's fresh, and the last thing we want is you telling us that either our child was involved in our own demise or that they're dead, period, right?
Right.
And so them getting the opportunity to see each other in a different light, be able to ask questions, be able to engage with one another, and just get a different perspective, but also letting the detectives know that don't let that first introduction, you telling me that my child is dead, be what you walk away and only thinking about me.
Right. So something that stands out to me with that said is, you know, I gotta ask you, the strength that it took and it takes to do the work that you do. One, like, where it sounds like this is your calling, but like, what was the moment? Tell me a little bit about the moment you felt like, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do with this energy, and this is what I need to do. And with that said too, what is some of like the biggest challenges you face with that? Because if it's me, like, I feel like, you know, there's probably days where, like, have you ever questioned yourself, like, man, like, you know, this is so much, you know, this is so much to take on, and have you ever felt like, you know, like quitting or stopping?
So to your first statement, it is my calling. I do believe God put me in this place to be able to help others. It is a lot. It's very demanding because you're dealing with your own emotions, your own grief, as well as others, right? So you're taking on their energy as well.
Right.
But I made the decision within hours of my son dying. We have choices in life, and only we get to make them for ourselves. And we're either survivors or we're victims. I'm not a victim, although I feel like I was victimized, but I won't live in a state of victimization. So I'm a survivor. I believe in living in a mindset of survivorship, and that's what I teach others, that you have to make that choice. You can either feel sorry for yourself. Every day is a new day for us, right? We relive the day that our child dies daily.
Right.
Every day that we put our foot on the ground and get up out of bed and move forward is a day that we have survived living here. So to allow someone to take my son and take me while I'm still amongst the living would be doing a disservice not only to myself, but for those who support me and those who love me.
Well put. I mean, like I said, just as hearing your story, I think of like how much strength, you know, like you just have, you know, and have to have, because like you say, when you talk to these grieving families, the emotions are contagious.
Yes.
Right. And so like your emotions have to be stronger to not get overcome with grief. Right. And you don't want to relive like you know your own grief. Obviously you are every day you deal with that, you know. So talking to another family when it's fresh, you know, to not get caught in it is just I just want people to understand, man, that takes a lot of strength. And
you have to be healed to do this work. If you're not healed, you should not venture into doing this work. A lot of people try to work with other families or do this work with working with families who are grieving and they haven't healed themselves. And so it's always going to be a trigger. So if you're doing this work and you're not healed, then someone else's trauma will trigger you.
Do you think your background in psych helps like you to deal with, the families and just help you understand your own grief and your own healing?
I believe my my faith, my belief in God, and my education helps me to understand and have a better grasp on dealing with this.
We're going to talk more about this, but I want to hold off for a second. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back after these messages.
Everyday amazing with Sky Alton.
Welcome back to the show. I am still here with Dr. Nicole Clavo Barkley. So before we went to break, we were talking about strength, but I kind of want to pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about some of the other work that you do. I understand you work with violent gang prevention.
So I am the director of the Office of Violence Prevention in Sacramento.
Tell me a little bit about what that is and the work that you do there.
So I am tasked with working with community-based organizations in which we fund. So currently we have a $3 million budget. In the past we've had upwards to $6 million where we put out requests for proposals to organizations who are working in our most violent areas that have been picked out by data. So we use data points to say where our hot spots are. So right now our hot spots within the city of Sacramento are Del Paso Heights, Meadowview, South Sac area, as well as Oak Park. So our organizations, the organizations that apply for that funding have to be working in those areas with the target population, which are those who are high risk, which in 2025, most of our youth are high risk to fall prey to gangs or violence. And those that we know for fact have the probability to pick up a gun. And so, we fund those organizations to be hands-on with those individuals. They range from 10 years old to 24 years old. We have the prevention side where they work with usually the elementary, junior high, high school age youth that are on the line, right? They're on the line of doing well to not doing well and could be easily influenced or have a probability of because of either family ties, the neighborhood itself, being drawn into gangs. And then we have those individuals that we know have guns that we ask them to work with, and they work with them and just try to give them a different walk. Show them that there are other opportunities out there, and just try to change the trajectory and the path in which they're traveling.
Now, when you say show them other opportunities, can you just speak to a little bit about like what that looks like? And I only ask that because I'm originally from Oakland, and I was fortunate enough to move out of Oakland when I was like 16, and my grandmother was in real estate, so she showed me just something different. And when I used to go back to Oakland and talk to my friends and tell them about like some of my experiences, it's kind of hard to get someone to imagine and change like, their view on life if they've never seen anything different, right? And so like, like you can tell somebody, oh, you can do all these things, but if they've never seen anyone else around them do it and they don't know anyone who's doing it, it just sounds like a pipe dream, right? And so I definitely think it's important. The best way to change someone is to show them personally, right? And so I just wanted to have you speak to like some examples of how you guys show them other things.
You are definitely right. A lot of our organizations, not all of them, but some of them have lived experience. Some of them that we are funding have done anywhere from 10 to 20 years, and that's male and female.
Wow.
That are now running successful organizations and doing great work. We have one organization who help put youth and young adults through construction programs, get them on a union. Okay. We have male mentorship programs where they do after school, before school, they work with them through sports. We have where we have resume building programs for some of them. They go on college tours throughout the country. They take them out and show them, different campuses, different HBCUs, different things of that. They've taken them to DC, to juvenile justice type programs in DC. They take them down to LA. They take them to areas, into places that they've never done. So transformational programs, to just show them that the sky's the limit. I'm here for you. Lean on me. A lot of them are accessible to them 24 hours a day. They go to the schools. A lot of them work in the schools. And so, it's open. It's open. I try to fund those who are familiar with the community. I'm one of those who are totally against just because you can write well and you can take the data of the inner city communities and you're able to put pen to paper and know how to go for the funding, so you get all the money,
right?
But yet you have no connection to the community. You're not from the community. And so one of the things I look at when I'm funding organizations is who can speak for you. Who in the community can vouch for you? You don't get to self-appoint yourself a community leader. Right. You have to be appointed by the community to be a community leader. And that's just from experience, being that my son went to Grant and that community adopted me. I'm from San Diego. I didn't know anybody in that area until he died, right? Wow. And so they adopted me, and listen, the sky's the limit in that area for me. There's nothing that I cannot do or promote there, or assistance that I can't receive. And that's citywide, but the heart of it is coming from that community. And so I understand I was appointed as a community leader of that community, not even being from there, never living in there, right? And so that gave me even a broader understanding of the purpose of what, when you say community leader and you say giving back and you say I've taken from or I'm giving to, because you're either a taker or you're a giver, or you learn through life obstacles to become a giver after you've already taken.
I like that. And as you, first of all, the fact that the community has accepted you and you give back and you guys all support each other, I think that's amazing. And, I wish we had more of that, especially within the Black community. But something that stood out to me is you're originally from San Diego, and I assume that you've been in SAC for a while now, correct? How have you seen just Sacramento change throughout the years? And I don't mean just like with the violence, but I do want to kind of speak on that, because I feel like you being from SAC, or not being from SAC, but being in SAC so long, you've probably just seen a lot. Like, so you've seen Sacramento go through like a lot of changes, And do you think that, we're in a better place now, or do you think when you first moved to SAC or whatever, there were things were a lot better and communities were thriving a little bit more? Or I just want to speak to that, because I'm not originally from SAC, so I don't know as much as like about SAC, but I am in SAC and I am trying to like support the community and hopefully.
I've probably been here as long as you have.
Oh, really?
How long have you been here?
Probably about 8 years.
Okay, I probably got you by a couple.
Okay.
I think from the time I started paying attention, right? Sacramento definitely was a bedroom city for me. I moved here for work. So it definitely, was a bedroom city for me. And I really wasn't paying any mind for years, the first 5 years that I was here. I say that it has gotten better. I know that our violence as far as homicides have dropped. in the last couple of years. And so I know that we're trending downwards in that way. And so that's always, regardless of what type of homicide it is, it's always great to see that our homicide numbers are dropping. And, and COVID had a huge impact on us, right? When it came to violence, we took a lot of things from our kids, from our young adults. They were very restless during that time. They didn't have school. They couldn't go to the malls. They had no outside. They were just kind of cooped up and had to figure it out for themselves. And so, a restless mind finds trouble. And so I definitely think we're doing better. We're not doing fantastic, but we're doing better. And I think it's just we have a lot of work to do. And I think as long as we continue to try to pour into our young adults, our youth, our young adults have, things to give them to do. And that's the biggest thing is resources and, having resources in our communities and resources for our youth and our children to do to where, they're not out at DOCO and passing out flyers, let's meet up and cause chaos, or Delta Shores, different outside malls that they tend to frequent, Old Sac and all of that. And they, let's link up and just take the city down, until we start providing them outlets and more access to things that are positive.
I like that because in Oakland, I used to go to Boys and Girls Club. That was a thing. And so I like to think that kept me like off the streets and that kept me like out of trouble because it was a place where everyone in West Oakland kind of like we were youth and your parents are working, it's kind of like where you hung out at, and where you all congregated. And there was things that they were doing there. There was things that they were trying to teach us and stuff like that. But it just really kept us from like wandering like the streets. And I've always said like, if we had more of that and, more cities or just more areas had more of that, then maybe then like, I know that that's not a fix-all, solve-all, but I just feel like for me, from personal experience, whatever, it just kept me from getting into a lot of trouble just because like that's all I like wanted to do. I met a lot of like friends there, lifelong friends, and it was just a good place. And so I definitely think, like you said, just providing more opportunities for people, because I don't think inherently no one, like even like the youth, it's not like they want to go and just inherently cause chaos. I think that stems from boredom, right? And I think that stems for not having opportunity, especially like when it comes to like jobs and making money. I was working when I was like 16 and a half, but it's also because I had the opportunity to, and jobs were hiring me, and something that I've always felt, and I've had this discussion with other people, is that, if you're gonna have a business in the community, I honestly think you should hire people from that community. You should give back to that community, I don't care what type of business it is. For all it can be a convenience store, for all I care, whatever. But if you have that store in that community and you're not hiring anybody from that community, I don't understand how that can be a thing and how people support that, because they're taking money out of it, but they're not bringing it back in. And so but then it comes down to the community to understand that and to kind of basically hold them accountable. Right. And say like, hey, like, we don't mind shopping here, but if we're gonna shop here, you need to provide jobs to the youth, like there's things that they can do. And I just feel like, not enough businesses do that.
Right. I think it always goes back on the community, right? Holding those who are coming into your community responsible and accountable for their actions. It's the same with the programs in which I fund. When I'm in meetings and I'm speaking to the community and they're asking questions, my question to them is always, what do you know about what's in your community? You're allowing these organizations to come in the community, but you're not questioning what are they doing for the community, or are they actually serving your youth and your young adults in the community? You have to hold them no different than we have to hold our politicians accountable. We vote. We vote, especially for our local politicians. We have the power to vote local politicians in and out. And if we're not holding any of these individuals down to the community-based organizations, businesses, liquor stores, restaurants, any of those things, then we're just as much at fault as anyone else.
Very well said. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your story and just speaking knowledge, you know, and telling us like all the work that you're doing and the work that you continue to do. I truly think like my platform was created for people like you who are actually in the community, giving back to the community. And so anytime I get to interview someone like yourself, it's always a pleasure for me and in my audience, but also I don't know, I take a lot of energy from people like you. Like people like you are why I continue to put out episodes and do the things that I do. So I just want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Exciting.
And to everyone out there, thank you. I hope you guys liked another episode of Everyday Amazing with Sky Alton. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And until next time, I'll see you then.